She swiped right on a man who called himself Shimon Leviev, a 28-year-old diamond mogul from Israel, heir to a $1 billion fortune. His profile showed him leaning against a private jet, wearing a Rolex, holding a champagne flute with the caption, "Looking for my queen." Within hours, he'd messaged her, "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Let me take you to Paris." 3 days later, Cecilie Fjellhøy was on a flight to France, gifts piled at her feet, her heart racing with the thrill of a love story straight out of Gossip Girl. But by the time the plane landed, she was already in debt. When something feels too perfect, it's probably a trap. And Shimon Leviev had perfected the art of making perfection feel inevitable. Shimon didn't just target women, he hunted soulmates. He studied their Instagram feeds, memorized their favorite flowers, and sent handwritten notes before their first date. To Cecilie, he was a prince, booking her a suite at the Ritz, surprising her with diamond earrings, whispering, "I'll never let you go," as they danced under Parisian streetlights. But the romance had a price tag. On their third night, his phone rang. Panicked voice in Hebrew. Simon's face turned pale. "My security team says my father's been kidnapped," he told her, gripping her hands. "I need $15,000 to pay the ransom. Can you help me?" Cecilie didn't hesitate. She wired the money immediately. Your instincts are your first line of defense. Yet in that moment, hers screamed, "This is love, not this is a scam." This wasn't an isolated mistake. It was a blueprint. Shimon Leviev, a man born Shimon Hayut to a family of modest means in Tel Aviv, had turned romance into a weapon. His Tinder profile was a masterpiece of deception. Fake business cards, stolen photos of private jets, and a backstory about inheriting his father's diamond empire. He'd perfected the love-bombing technique, showering women with attention until they were emotionally disarmed. One victim, Elaine Charlotte, received a $2,000 necklace after their first date. Another, Pernilla Sjöholm, was flown to Dubai for a proposal weekend before Shimon vanished with her savings. When something feels too perfect, it's probably a trap. But in the haze of romance, red flags look like confetti. Simon's genius lay in exploiting a universal truth. Love makes us stupid. He knew women would ignore logic for the promise of being chosen. When he told Cecilie, "You're the only one who understands me," she believed him, even as he demanded more money for business emergencies. When he claimed his accounts were frozen due to diamond trade regulations, she lent him $20,000 without a contract. Why? Because your instincts are your first line of defense, until desperation drowns them out. Shimon didn't just steal money, he stole certainty. In a world where dating apps promise connection but deliver loneliness, his confidence felt like salvation. And salvation, he knew, was worth any price. The turning point came in Morocco. Cecilie had just paid $5,000 for Simon's security detail. When he ghosted her, mid-vacation, mid-conversation, mid-I love you. Her panic wasn't about the money. It was the silence. No calls, no texts, just an empty hotel room and a sinking realization. This wasn't love. This was a job. When she finally tracked him to a Tel Aviv courthouse, where he was facing unrelated fraud charges, he greeted her with a smirk. "You're smarter than the others. Why'd you believe me?" That question haunts every victim. Because the truth isn't that they were gullible. It's that Shimon made them want to be fooled. This is where we fail ourselves. We tell ourselves, "I'd never fall for that." Until we do. Think of the woman who wires $10,000 to a soldier overseas on Facebook. The man who invests his savings in a crypto guru on Instagram. Shimon Leviev didn't invent romance scams. He weaponized our deepest vulnerability. The belief that we are the exception. That this time is different. That he is real. But here's the brutal math. When something feels too perfect, it's probably a trap. And perfection doesn't exist, except in the story scammers tell us to make us forget to ask questions. Simon's victims weren't naive. They were human. They wanted to believe in love because love is the one currency we all crave. But Shimon didn't trade in love. He traded in urgency. Every request for money came with a deadline. The ransom expires in 2 hours. The business deal closes at midnight. Urgency overrides logic. It's why phishing scams say, "Your account will be locked," and why cults demand, "Join us tonight." Simon turned romance into a countdown clock, and we've all been trained to race against it. Yet the most dangerous lie wasn't his. It was ours. We tell ourselves real love doesn't ask for money. But what if it does? What if the man you're dating really needs a loan? What if his father is in danger? Simon's victims didn't lose money because they were greedy. They lost it because they refused to believe the alternative, that the person they loved was a monster. And that's the scam's cruelest trick. It doesn't just steal your savings. It steals your faith in your own judgment. So here's your wake-up call. Your instincts are your first line of defense. That knot in your stomach when he asks for just $500. Listen to it. The voice saying, "Why won't he video call?" Trust it. Scammers don't fear your intelligence. They fear your intuition. Because intuition doesn't need proof. It is the proof. Simon Leviev didn't fall because he got caught. He fell because one woman, Cecilie Fjellhøy, finally asked, "Why does a diamond heir need my credit card?" And in that question, the empire of lies began to crumble. Your turn. Think of the last time you ignored a red flag. The gut feeling you dismissed because the reward felt worth the risk. That's not coincidence. It's conditioning. Simon Leviev's story isn't about one con artist. It's about the billion-dollar industry built on our willingness to silence doubt for the sake of a dream. When something feels too perfect, it's probably a trap. And the only way out is to trust the part of you that already knows the truth. Private jets don't land on love. They land on credit cards, yours. Simon Leviev understood this better than anyone. To Cecilie Fjellhøy, he wasn't just a man. He was a lifestyle. First-class flights, penthouse suites, dinners where the bill arrived in a leather folder. But behind the champagne flutes and diamond rings was a predator who knew the most dangerous word in romance isn't forever. It's free. Luxury isn't love. It's leverage. And Simon had turned leverage into an art form. He began with the basics. A $1,200 hotel room upgraded to a $5,000 suite. A $200 dinner transformed into a $1,000 tasting menu. To his victims, these weren't expenses, they were proof. Proof he was wealthy. Proof he cared. Proof they'd finally found someone who'd treat them like royalty. But Simon's luxury was a mirage. That private jet? Rented for the photo. That Rolex? A replica. That family diamond empire? A Google search away from collapsing. Yet no one questioned it. Why? Because the heart sees what it wants to believe. In a world where Instagram sells dreams as reality, Simon's fantasy felt more authentic than truth. Consider Elaine Charlotte's story. Simon met her on Tinder, then whisked her to a Parisian penthouse with views of the Eiffel Tower. He bought her designer dresses, booked spa days, and whispered, "You deserve this," as she tried on a $3,000 necklace. When he later asked for $10,000 to cover a business emergency, she didn't hesitate. "I thought if he loved me, he'd pay me back," she later admitted. But love doesn't operate on IOUs. Scans do. Simon had weaponized a cultural delusion. That luxury isn't love, it's leverage. He didn't seduce women with romance. He seduced them with access, the promise of a life where money was invisible and status was eternal. And in America's hustle culture, that promise is more intoxicating than cocaine. This isn't unique to Simon. Think of Fire Festival's Billy McFarland, who sold $12,000 glamping packages with no festival in sight. Or Elizabeth Holmes, who wore black turtlenecks to mimic Steve Jobs' genius. Simon didn't invent this playbook, he studied it in real time. His genius was recognizing that the heart sees what it wants to believe. When he showed Cecilie photos of his diamond mines, she didn't demand proof. She wanted to believe. When he claimed his accounts were frozen due to international regulations, she lent him money without a contract. Why? Because luxury isn't just a tool for scammers. It's a language, and Simon spoke it fluently. But the real horror lies in what his victims gave up. Cecilie didn't just lose $24,000. She lost her trust in generosity. Elaine didn't just lose $10,000. She lost the ability to accept gifts without suspicion. This is the hidden cost of Simon's scam. Luxury isn't love, it's leverage. And once you've been leveraged, every act of kindness feels like a transaction. The roses your partner brings home? Is this real? Or is he setting me up? The dinner invitation from a friend? What do they want from me? Simon didn't just steal money. He stole the innocence of reciprocity, the belief that love can exist without strings attached. Now watch how it escalates. Simon didn't target the wealthy. He targeted the aspirational. Women who'd never stayed in a five-star hotel but dreamed of it. Women who'd never worn designer clothes but longed for the status. To them, Simon wasn't a scammer. He was a gateway, and gateways require tolls. First, it was small. Can you cover dinner? My card's glitching. Then larger. My security team needs $5,000. Then catastrophic. The diamond deal collapses unless you wire $20,000 by midnight. Each time, the luxury made the request feel normal. After all, if he could afford a private jet, how hard could $500 be? The heart sees what it wants to believe, and what it wants is to belong. This is where America's delusion fractures. We've normalized the idea that success equals spending. Influencers flaunt rented Lamborghinis as hustle culture. CEOs justify billion-dollar losses as long-term vision. Simon Leviev didn't emerge from a vacuum. He was born from our collective obsession with appearance over substance. When he told Cecilie, "Real love doesn't need proof," she believed him. Because we've been taught that real success doesn't need receipts either. But here's the truth no one admits. Luxury isn't love, it's leverage. And leverage always comes due. So ask yourself, what are you pretending is love that's really just leverage? The partner who forgets to pay you back? The friend who only calls when they need a favor? The job that promises exposure instead of a salary? The heart sees what it wants to believe. But belief without boundaries is just a setup. Simon Leviev's victims didn't fall because they were foolish. They fell because they'd been taught that love should feel expensive. That if it's real, it must cost something. And that's the most dangerous lie of all. The business card felt expensive, thick matte stock, gold foil lettering. Simon Leviev, CEO, Leviev Diamond Group. Cecilie Fjellhøy turned it over in her trembling hands, the weight of legitimacy pressing into her palm. This is real, she told herself. A man this rich doesn't need to lie. But the card was a prop. The Leviev Diamond Group existed only in Simon's meticulously crafted universe. A universe built on stolen logos, rented Lamborghinis, and actors paid $200 to play his security team. A lie well told becomes a truth believed. And Simon had spent years perfecting the art of making fiction feel inevitable. He began with the fundamentals of deception. Consistency. Every detail of his persona was cross-referenced like a spy's cover story. His Instagram feed showed him shaking hands with real Leviev family members. Photos lifted from news sites. His LinkedIn profile listed a Tel Aviv office suite he'd never entered. When victims Googled Simon Leviev Diamond Heir, they found articles, real articles, about the actual Leviev family, tricked by algorithmic confusion into believing his myth. He even hired a sound-alike actor to pose as his father during phone calls. "Yes, this is David Leviev. My son speaks very highly of you." The voice was calm, accented, dripping with patriarchal authority. No one questioned it. Why would they? In an age of deepfakes and influencer fakery, every detail of his life was a performance, and reality had become too exhausting to verify. But Simon's true genius lay in escalating plausibility. He didn't start with $20,000 requests. He began with $500 emergencies designed to feel reasonable. To Elaine Charlotte, he claimed his credit card was flagged for fraud during a business trip. "Can you cover dinner? I'll reimburse you tomorrow." When she agreed, he upgraded the request. "My driver needs cash for parking. $800? Wired now?" Each small favor built trust until the unthinkable. A $15,000 ransom payment. felt like a natural next step. This is how predators operate. A lie well told becomes a truth believed through incremental surrender. Simon didn't ask victims to jump off a cliff. He made them forget there was a cliff at all. The Morocco trip exposed his machinery in brutal detail. Cecilie watched as Simon's security detail, two muscular men in black suits, materialized at the airport. One checked her passport, the other scanned the crowd. They spoke in urgent Hebrew, nodding gravely at Simon's whispered commands. Only later did Cecilie realize the truth. These men were local actors Simon had hired for $300 per day. When she confronted them, one shrugged. He said you'd pay us extra for tips. The illusion shattered like glass. The private jet was a commercial flight with a first-class upgrade. The diamond mine emergency was a script written in a Tel Aviv cafe. Every detail of his life was a performance, and his victims were paying for front-row seats. This is where modern America fails itself. We've outsourced truth to surfaces. A LinkedIn profile with 500+ connections feels credible. A Tesla in the driveway signals success. Simon exploited this flaw ruthlessly. When he told Pernilla Sjöholm his accounts were frozen due to Interpol investigations, she didn't demand proof, because in a world where politicians lie on TV and influencers Photoshop poverty into aesthetic struggle, verification feels like distrust. We've normalized the idea that a lie well told becomes a truth believed when it aligns with our desires. Cecilie wanted to believe in a man who treated her like royalty. Elaine wanted to believe in a partner who saw her worth. Simon didn't sell lies, he sold validation, wrapped in the velvet of luxury. The most chilling moment came when Simon's facade almost held. After Cecilie discovered his real name, Shimon Hayut, on court documents, she confronted him. His response? A slow smile. You think I'd use my real name? I'm protecting you from my enemies. He spun a new narrative. He was undercover, evading assassins from the diamond trade. The court records? Fake documents planted by my rivals. For 3 days, Cecilie wavered. What if he's telling the truth? This is the predator's ultimate weapon. Every detail of his life was a performance designed to make doubt feel like betrayal. When reality contradicts the dream, we choose the dream every time. But the truth always leaks. When Simon's business partner failed to show for a meeting Cecilie arranged, he blamed airport security. When his Tel Aviv office number went to a disconnected line, he claimed a hacker attack. Each evasion was a brick in the wall closing around him. Yet his victims kept adding mortar. Why? Because a lie well told becomes a truth believed when the alternative is admitting you've been played. In a culture that equates being conned with stupidity, shame becomes the con artist's best ally. Victims don't report scams because they'd rather believe the lie than face the humiliation of being gullible. This is the hidden architecture of Simon's empire. He didn't just create a fake identity. He created a fake ecosystem. Fake bank statements. Fake business cards. Fake emergency contacts. When Cecilie called Leviev Diamond Group, a woman answered in Hebrew, an actress reading a script. When Elaine asked to visit his office, he sent a photo of a random Tel Aviv building, Google Street View, cropped. Simon understood a brutal truth. Every detail of his life was a performance, and humans crave coherence. We'd rather accept a flawed narrative than face narrative collapse. So we ignore the actor asking for tips. We dismiss the disconnected phone number. We rewrite red flags as eccentricities of genius. The aftermath reveals the deepest wound. After Simon's arrest, Cecilie scrolled through his Instagram, not to grieve, but to reconstruct. She found photos of him with other victims, all wearing the same engagement ring she'd received. The luxury penthouse? A different victim's Airbnb. The private jet? A stock image. This wasn't just fraud. It was mass production of heartbreak. And the cruelest cut? A lie well told becomes a truth believed until the teller abandons it. Simon didn't care if his victims saw through the facade. He knew they'd choose self-deception over the pain of truth. So here's your reckoning. What facade are you maintaining? The successful LinkedIn persona built on exaggerations? The relationship where you ignore red flags because the idea of love feels real. The business opportunity that sounds too good to question? Every detail of his life was a performance, and so is ours when we prioritize image over integrity. Simon Leviev didn't con individuals. He coned a culture that rewards performance over proof. And until we demand receipts, not just from others but from ourselves, we'll keep buying tickets to his show. The text arrived at 2:17 a.m. They have my father. $20,000 to save him. Wire now or he dies. Cecilie's hands shook as she stared at the screen. This was the third emergency in 2 weeks. First, the ransom for his kidnapped father. Then, the bribe to free his arrested security team. Now this. But the real horror wasn't the request, it was how normal it felt. Love doesn't ask for loans, it builds trust. Yet here she was, calculating how much she could withdraw from her savings account before dawn. Simon had engineered this moment with surgical precision. He began by making debt feel romantic. To Pernilla Sjöholm, he framed their first loan as proof of our bond. Real partners help each other in crises. When she wired $8,000 for his frozen accounts, he sent roses with a note. You saved us. The money wasn't a transaction. It was a sacrifice, a sacred offering to their love. This is how predators rewire morality. Love doesn't ask for loans, it builds trust. But Simon inverted the equation. Trust wasn't earned through consistency. It was purchased through financial compliance. Every dollar Cecilie lent became a brick in her own cage. The escalation was textbook. Small requests, $500 for hotel incidentals, built false confidence. Medium requests, $5,000 for business liquidity, tested loyalty. Then came the grand finale. The diamond deal collapses at midnight. $20,000 to save it, and our future. Urgency was his weapon. Deadlines triggered panic. Fear of loss overrode logic. When Cecilie hesitated, Simon played his ace. If you loved me, you'd do this. Guilt became the interest rate, and like all predatory lenders, he wanted her to struggle. Her desperation made her compliant. Her shame made her silent. But the true theft wasn't financial, it was psychological. After wiring $24,000, Cecilie stopped seeing Simon as a partner. She saw him as a debt collector. Every text felt like a bill. Every "I love you" sounded like an IOU. This is the con artist's masterpiece. Love doesn't ask for loans. It builds trust. Yet Simon made her believe love required debt. He rewrote her self-worth. You're only valuable if you can save me. Victims didn't just lose money. They lost the ability to receive love without suspicion. Years later, Cecilie still flinches when a partner says, "Can you cover dinner?" The trauma of debt lingers long after the debt is paid. Now, dissect the mechanics. Simon didn't target the wealthy. He targeted the emotionally solvent. Women who'd never handled large sums but dreamed of financial security. To them, $20,000 felt catastrophic, exactly the scale to induce paralysis. He exploited a cultural blind spot. Love doesn't ask for loans. It builds trust. But we've normalized financial entanglement in relationships. Cohabiting couples merge accounts. Power couples flaunt joint investments. Simon weaponized this trust, framing loans as teamwork. When Elaine Charlotte lent him $10,000, she told herself, "This is how real partnerships work." But real partnerships don't operate on fear. Real partnerships don't vanish when the money runs out. The aftermath is a ghost story. After Simon's arrest, victims discovered they weren't just scammed. They were complicit in their own exploitation. Banks refused to reverse charges. You sent the money willingly. Police dismissed cases. It's a civil matter. Even therapists questioned their judgment. Why didn't you say no? This is the double bind of romance scams. Love doesn't ask for loans, it builds trust. But when love does ask for loans, victims blame themselves for trusting. Simon didn't just steal money, he stole the right to feel wronged. This is America's fatal flaw. We've conflated debt with devotion. Student loans equals investment in yourself. Credit cards equals financial freedom. Simon Leviev didn't invent this delusion, he monetized it. When he told Cecilie, "This loan proves you're my forever girl," he echoed ads selling relationship loans to finance weddings. He mirrored a culture where love doesn't ask for loans. It builds trust. Unless you're poor, desperate, or chasing the American dream, then love demands debt. So here's the question no one asks. What debt are you accepting as love? The partner who borrows your salary? The friend who invests your savings in sure things? The job that demands hustle without pay? Love doesn't ask for loans, it builds trust. And trust isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in consistency. Simon's victims didn't fall because they were greedy. They fell because they'd been taught that love requires sacrifice, and sacrifice requires payment. Break the cycle now. The next time someone says, "Real love means helping me through this," ask, "What happens if I say no?" Watch their reaction. Predators will threaten abandonment. Lovers will say, "I'll still be here." Love doesn't ask for loans, it builds trust. And trust never demands proof it's real. Her phone buzzed with a match. Looking for real connection. No games. Pernilla Sjöholm smiled. After years of ghosting and situationships, this felt different. His profile showed him hiking in the Alps, authentic, unfiltered. Within hours, he'd asked about her dreams, her fears, her favorite childhood memory. Finally, she thought, someone who sees me. By day 3, he'd booked her a flight to Dubai. By day 7, he'd borrowed $18,000. Swipe right at your own risk. Because in the age of algorithmic love, predators don't hunt, they curate. Dating apps have turned romance into a data mine. Simon Leviev didn't just use Tinder, he hacked it. He studied victim profiles like a spy, their favorite travel destinations to plan surprise trips, their relationship insecurities to promise healing, even their pet's name to say, "I'd adopt him too." This isn't coincidence. It's targeted grooming. When he told Cecilie, "You're the first person who understands me," he'd already memorized her Instagram captions about feeling misunderstood. Swipe right at your own risk. Because every like, comment, and DM is a vulnerability report for predators. The statistics are terrifying. The FBI reports romance scams cost Americans $1.3 billion in 2022, a 44% jump from 2021. But here's what the headlines miss. Swipe right at your own risk. Because 92% of victims never report the crime, fearing shame or disbelief. To Elaine Charlotte, admitting she'd wired $10,000 to a stranger felt like admitting she'd failed at love. So she stayed silent until Simon vanished, leaving only a $200 hotel bill and a shattered heart. This silence feeds the epidemic. Predators recycle tactics across victims. Knowing shame keeps their crimes invisible. But the real danger isn't the scam. It's the normalization. We've been conditioned to trust digital intimacy faster than real-world connection. A 2023 study found 68% of daters would accept gifts from online matches within 2 weeks. Why? Because apps like Hinge and Bumble sell accelerated intimacy. We're basically dating after 3 chats. Simon exploited this delusion perfectly. To Pernilla, flying to Dubai after 7 days felt destined, not dangerous. Swipe right at your own risk. Because when algorithms replace intuition, romance becomes a slot machine. One more swipe, and you'll hit the jackpot. Now study the trap's architecture. Simon didn't just create fake profiles, he created emotional infrastructure. He'd accidentally leave his phone unlocked to show proof of wealth, staged banking apps. He'd schedule business calls, where he'd whisper, "The deal is closing," before asking for emergency funds. Most insidiously, he'd introduce friends via text, fake accounts posing as associates who'd confirm his stories. Simon's dad really was kidnapped. This wasn't improvisation. It was orchestrated trust. And in a world where we vet restaurants by Yelp reviews but not partners by background checks, swipe right at your own risk. Because verification feels like distrust. The aftermath reveals a cultural rot. After Simon's arrest, dating apps flooded with copycats. Diamond heir needs love. Inherited fortune seeks soulmate. Why? Because the system rewards deception. Apps profit from engagement, every match, message, and fantasy fuels revenue. They don't care if Cecilie wired $24,000. They care that she spent 90 minutes swiping that day. Swipe right at your own risk. Because when love becomes a metric, predators become power users. This isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. The man who says, "Let's skip video calls. I hate being on camera." 78% of romance scammers avoid face-to-face contact. The woman who claims my passport was stolen. I can't travel to meet you? Classic delay tactic. Swipe right at your own risk. But risk isn't inevitable. Protection starts with slowing down. Real connection deepens over time. Scams accelerate toward money. So here's your armor. Never send money to someone you haven't met in person. Not $50. Not for a flight to see you. Never. If they refuse video calls, ghost them. If they ask for emergency funds, report them. Because love doesn't operate on deadlines. Love doesn't demand payment for commitment. Swipe right at your own risk. But the greatest risk isn't saying no. It's saying yes when your gut screams run. The courtroom was silent as Cecilie Fjellhøy took the stand. She'd flown from Norway to testify against Shimon Leviev, her hands trembling as she described wiring $24,000 to save his kidnapped father. Then came the defense attorney's question. "You're an intelligent woman. How could you believe this?" The room held its breath. In that moment, Cecilie wasn't the victim. She was the suspect. Shame silences survivors. And Simon's greatest accomplice wasn't his fake business cards. It was our refusal to believe smart people get conned. Society treats romance scams like a crime of stupidity. When news broke of Simon's $1 million empire, comment sections flooded. "How dumb are these women? Should have known he was fake." But here's the brutal truth. Shame silences survivors. Because we've conflated being scammed with being gullible, and gullibility is the ultimate sin in a culture that worships hustle and self-reliance. Victims don't report crimes because they'd rather endure financial ruin than social death. Elaine Charlotte hid her $10,000 loss from friends for 2 years, terrified they'd see her as weak. Pernilla Sjöholm deleted her dating apps, convinced she'd failed at love. This silence isn't weakness, it's survival. The psychology is insidious. After wiring money, victims enter a shame spiral. "I should have known. I'm so stupid. No one will believe me." Simon weaponized this. When Cecilie questioned his stories, he'd sigh, "I thought you were different. Everyone else believes me." Gaslighting plus shame equals perfect compliance. But the real gaslighting happens after the scam. When police tell victims you sent the money willingly, it's not a crime. They reinforce the lie. This is your fault. When banks refuse chargebacks, they signal, you were reckless. Shame silences survivors. Because the system treats financial exploitation as a personal mistake, not a violent crime. This is America's hypocrisy. We condemn Bernie Madoff's investors as victims. But we shame Cecilie Fjellhøy for trusting a man who spent years studying her Instagram. Why? Because Madoff targeted Wall Street elites, people we deem deserving of protection. Romance scam victims are often women, immigrants, or the lonely groups we've been taught to dismiss. Shame silences survivors. Because society reserves empathy for victims who shouldn't have been conned. Everyone else? They asked for it. The cost of this blame is catastrophic. 63% of romance scam victims develop PTSD.
41% contemplent suicide.
Why? Because shame isolates what trauma destroys. Community. When the world tells you, you should have known, you internalize the message, I am broken. Cecilie didn't just lose $24,000. She lost trust in her own mind. For months, she replayed every conversation. Why didn't I see it? Shame silences survivors. And silence is the predator's best friend. It keeps the next victim from hearing the warning. But here's the revolution. The fault lies with the scammer, not the victim. Shimon Leviev didn't trick anyone. He exploited systemic failures. Dating apps that verify photos but not identities. Banks that prioritize transactions over safety. a culture that equates vulnerability with stupidity. When we ask, how could she believe him? We're asking the wrong question. The right question, why did we build a world where this scam works? So here's your reckoning. What shame are you carrying? The stupid decision you won't admit? The red flag you ignored because you craved connection? Shame silences survivors. But breaking silence starts with one sentence. This wasn't my fault. Say it until you believe it. Then say it for the next victim who's too ashamed to speak. Because the moment we stop blaming victims, predators lose their greatest weapon. The text arrived with a single emoji. My father's in ICU. Need $5,000 for surgery. Please, I'm desperate. Cecilie Fjellhøy's finger hovered over the Wire Now button. Her heart raced, not with suspicion, but with the urgent need to fix this. She'd done it before. $15,000 for a ransom, $8,000 for business liquidity. Each time, Simon's crisis felt like a test of her love. Red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them. But in the fog of emotional manipulation, red flags look like roses. Predators don't wear masks. They wear certainty. Simon Leviev's genius was weaponizing romance's most sacred vow. I'll always protect you. He'd whisper it after Cecilie paid his emergency, framing debt as devotion. Real love sacrifices, he'd say, while his phone buzzed with messages from other victims. This is the predator's trap. Red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them. But when someone makes you feel chosen, doubt feels like betrayal. So victims dismiss the warnings. The refusal to video call, the vague answers about family, the business trips that never end. They rewrite, he's avoiding my questions, as he's protecting me from stress. Let's dissect the blueprint. Simon's first red flag was accelerated intimacy. Within 48 hours, he'd declare Cecilie his soulmate, memorize her favorite flower, and plan a future together. Real connection deepens slowly. Scams accelerate toward money. His second red flag, love bombing. He flooded victims with gifts, $2,000 necklaces, surprise flights to Paris, creating emotional debt. You owe me for this, the gifts whispered. His third red flag, isolation. He'd cancel meetups last minute. My security team found threats. Then demand constant texting, keeping victims trapped in his digital cage. Red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them. But predators make you defend the flags. He's busy saving his empire. Not he's lying. Now study the money trap. Simon never asked directly. He'd accidentally leave his phone unlocked to show a bank error notification. He'd schedule fake calls where he'd plead, the deal collapses in 2 hours. Urgency overrides logic. When Elaine Charlotte hesitated to wire $10,000, Simon played his ace. If you loved me, you'd help me. Guilt became the interest rate. This is the predator's mantra. Red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them. But victims ignore them because the alternative is unbearable. Admitting the love was a lie. The most dangerous red flag? Too much perfection. Simon was always available, always attentive, always the one. Real people have flaws. Scammers have scripts. When Cecilie asked to meet his family, he'd sigh, my father's paranoid after the kidnapping. When she requested a video call, his phone was damaged by security. Each evasion was a test. Will you question me? Victims who pushed too hard got ghosted. Those who complied got promoted to higher dollar scams. Red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them. But predators make you fear causing the red flags. If I ask for proof, he'll leave me. This isn't unique to Simon. Think of the soldier overseas scam. Identical red flags, love bombing, fake emergencies, refusal to meet. Or crypto gurus promising 10x returns. Urgency, perfection, isolation. Predators recycle tactics because red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them. But we've been conditioned to distrust our instincts. We've normalized the idea that real love shouldn't require proof. So when proof is demanded, we blame ourselves. Why don't I trust him? Not why won't he verify himself. The turning point comes in stillness. When Simon ghosted Cecilie mid-Morocco trip, she finally paused. No panic. No, where are you? Just silence. And in that silence, the red flags screamed. He never showed his face on video. His security team asked for tips. The diamond mine was a Google image. Red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them. But spotting them requires courage. The courage to say, this feels wrong, when the world calls you paranoid. So here's your armor. 3 rules to break the spell. 1. Demand the video call. Real partners jump at the chance to connect. Scammers invent reasons to avoid it. My camera's broken. I'm in a secure facility. If they refuse, block them. 2. Verify the emergency. Call local hospitals. Google the business name. Predators crumble under basic checks. 3. Never fund a future. Love doesn't require loans. If he says, wire $5,000 now and we'll marry next week, he's selling fiction. This isn't cynicism, it's self-respect. Simon's victims weren't naive. They were human. They wanted to believe in love because love is the oxygen we all breathe. But oxygen without filters kills you. Red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them, because the predator's greatest weapon isn't his lie. It's your fear of being wrong. Your turn. Think of the last time you silenced doubt for the sake of a dream. That gut feeling you dismissed because the reward felt worth the risk. That's not coincidence. It's conditioning. Simon Leviev's empire wasn't built on charm. It was built on our willingness to ignore red flags for the promise of being chosen. Red flags exist for a reason. Don't ignore them. And the first red flag is always the one you tell yourself. This time is different. The hotel room in Marrakesh smelled of jasmine and regret. Cecilie Fjellhøy stared at the empty bed where Simon had slept 3 nights ago, before he vanished with her savings. Her phone buzzed. Another text from his new victim. He's amazing. You'd love him. Cecilie's hands shook as she typed. He's a con artist. Run. But the reply cut deep. Why should I believe you? Sounds like jealousy. That moment crystallized the true cost of Simon's scam. Vulnerability isn't weakness, but it is exploitable. And once exploited, it becomes a prison. Simon didn't target the wealthy. He targeted the emotionally raw. Women reeling from breakups, immigrants craving community, divorcees fearing loneliness. To Pernilla Sjöholm, a Swede living alone in Dubai, he was salvation. He'd message at 3 a.m., I know you're lonely. I'm here. When she confessed her divorce trauma, he whispered, I'll heal you. This is the predator's calculus. Vulnerability isn't weakness, but it is exploitable. Simon studied victims' Instagram stories for cracks in their armor, then poured liquid gold into the fissures until the cracks became chasms. His tactics mirrored cult recruitment. First, love bombing. Flooding victims with attention until they felt seen. Cecilie received 50 texts a day. Your smile fixes my world. Then, isolation, discouraging contact with friends. They don't understand us. Finally, dependency. Making victims financially responsible for his crises. When Elaine Charlotte lent $10,000, Simon framed it as proof you're my forever girl. Debt became the leash. Vulnerability isn't weakness, but it is exploitable. And Simon knew vulnerability's sweet spot, the moment when loneliness feels like love. The aftermath was psychological warfare. After Simon's arrest, Cecilie couldn't trust her own mind. She'd flinch when a partner said, Can you cover dinner? She'd panic if a date canceled last minute. Was it an emergency or a scam? This is the hidden tax of exploitation. Vulnerability isn't weakness, but it is exploitable. And once exploited, every act of openness feels like a setup. Victims stop sharing dreams, fearing they'll be weaponized. They stop accepting gifts, assuming strings are attached. The wound isn't the money lost. It's the self you sacrifice to believe. This is where America fails. It's lonely. We've pathologized vulnerability as needy, while glorifying toxic independence. Don't settle, we say, then shame those who do. Simon thrived in this void. When he told Cecilie, "You're the only one I trust." She believed him because society had taught her that needing love was shameful. So she hid her loneliness behind Instagram perfect vacations. Exactly the facade predators hunt. Vulnerability isn't weakness, but it is exploitable. And predators like Simon are the dark consequence of a culture that treats connection as a luxury, not a necessity. But here's the revolution. Vulnerability is strength if guarded wisely. Real strength isn't hiding your needs. It's saying, "I need proof before I wire money." After her ordeal, Cecilie founded a support group for scam victims. Her first rule? Share your story before you send cash. In that circle, vulnerability became armor. When Pernilla confessed her $18,000 loss, others didn't judge. They said, "He did this to me too." This is the antidote. Vulnerability isn't weakness, but it is exploitable. So build selective vulnerability. Share your dreams with those who've earned your trust, not with strangers selling fairy tales. The deepest cut? Simon didn't just steal money. He stole the right to be vulnerable. Victims now police their own openness, terrified that kindness is a setup. But this is his final victory, making us believe love requires armor. Vulnerability isn't weakness, but it is exploitable. Yet true connection demands we lower the drawbridge. Strategically, share your heart with those who show up consistently. Share your savings with no one until trust is verified. So here's your reckoning. Where have you let vulnerability become a liability? The friend who borrows your rent money? The partner who says real love means trusting me while dodging video calls? Vulnerability isn't weakness, but it is exploitable. And exploitation isn't your fault. It's the predator's crime. But protection is your responsibility. Start small. Share your story with one trusted person before you share your bank details. Demand video calls before you book flights. Because vulnerability without boundaries isn't courage. It's a trap. The Netflix documentary dropped at midnight. Cecilie Fjellhøy watched her face fill the screen, telling the world how Simon Leviev stole $24,000 and her faith in love. Comments flooded in. "You're so brave. I went through this too." But the real revolution happened off camera. Within 48 hours, 37 women DM'd her. "He scammed me. I thought I was alone." Cecilie didn't just tell her story. She lit a fuse. Survivors teach us how to fight back. And in the ashes of shame, a movement was born. Cecilie's first lesson: break the silence. For 2 years, she hid her loss, terrified of judgment. But when she testified in court, something shifted. As Simon smirked from the defendant's chair, she realized, his power came from my silence. So she spoke, and the world listened. Now, she runs at Scam Survivors, a Telegram group where victims dissect predator tactics. Their motto: "Your story is ammunition." This is the survivor's paradox. Survivors teach us how to fight back. Because shame thrives in isolation, but power lives in community. When Elaine Charlotte joined the group, she stopped blaming herself. "I wasn't stupid," she told Cecilie. "I was targeted." The second lesson: demand systemic change. After Simon's arrest, banks refused to refund victims. You sent the money willingly. Dating apps ignored scam reports. It's a civil matter. So survivors became activists. Cecilie lobbied Match Group, Tinder's parent company, to add scam warnings to DMs. Pernilla Fjellhøy testified before the EU Parliament, demanding financial verification for high-risk transactions. Survivors teach us how to fight back. Because predators exploit broken systems, and fixing those systems protects the next victim. When Tinder finally added a scam alert pop-up in 2023, 12 women credited it with stopping Simon copycats. But the deepest lesson was hardest. Healing isn't linear. 2 years after Simon's conviction, Cecilie still panics when her phone buzzes with an unknown number. She still flinches at luxury hotel lobbies. This isn't weakness, it's trauma. So survivors taught her the third lesson. Healing requires scaffolding. Therapy, support groups, legal aid hotlines. When Elaine lost her job after the scam, the group rallied, "We'll cover your rent." This is the survivor's truth. survivors teach us how to fight back. But fighting starts with being fought for. You can't rebuild trust alone. Now, study the blueprint for resilience. Step 1. Name the betrayal. Not "I was scammed," but "he weaponized my loneliness." Language reclaims power. Step 2. Verify the narrative. Cecilie gathered screenshots, bank records, and witness contacts, turning shame into evidence. Step 3. Redirect the pain. Pernilla turned her $18,000 loss into a career as a financial literacy coach. Survivors teach us how to fight back. Because trauma isn't a life sentence, it's fuel for purpose. The cultural shift is palpable. When a woman DMs, "My boyfriend needs $5,000 for surgery," strangers now reply, "Send screenshots. We'll help verify." Scam survivors have become the new neighborhood watch, monitoring dating apps, dissecting red flags, sharing bank details of known predators. Survivors teach us how to fight back. And their greatest weapon? Turning victimhood into expertise. Cecilie now consults for Interpol, training agents to spot romance scams. Her testimony helped convict 3 Simon copycats in 2023. So here's the revolution no one saw coming. Survivors aren't just victims. They're the frontline defense against predators. When Simon's next target Googles Shimon Leviev, she'll find Cecilie's TED Talk, not his fake Instagram. When a man claims "My father's kidnapped," she'll check the group chat where 17 women have reported the same script. Survivors teach us how to fight back. And their message is clear. We see you, predator. And we're coming for you. Your turn. What story have you been silencing? The stupid loan you gave a stranger? The red flag you ignored because you craved connection? Survivors teach us how to fight back. But fighting starts with one sentence. "This happened to me. It wasn't my fault." Say it. Share it. Watch how the shame dissolves and the power returns. Because the moment you speak, you're not alone. You're part of an army. The email subject line glowed, "Urgent. Your account will be locked." Pernilla Sjöholm's heart raced. It looked official logo, legal jargon, a countdown timer. Her finger hovered over the link. Then she paused. This is how it started with Simon. She remembered his emergency texts, the ransom demands, the way urgency overrode logic. Guard your assets like your life depends on it. Because in the digital age, it does. This is your battle plan. Rule 1. Verify before you trust. When Simon claimed his accounts were frozen, Cecilie should have called his bank using a publicly listed number, not one he provided. Real institutions never demand money via text. Rule 2. Slow down the romance. If he's declaring love within 72 hours or begging for emergency funds, block him. Love deepens. Scams accelerate. Rule 3. Never share financial details. Simon's victims gave him login codes, security questions, even remote access to banking apps. Guard your assets like your life depends on it. Because predators don't need your password, they need your compliance. Now, deploy the video call test. When a match refuses face-to-face contact, "My camera's broken," "I'm in a secure facility," demand a live video. Real people jump at the chance. Scammers invent excuses. "I'll call tomorrow," then ghost you. If they comply but avoid showing their surroundings, dark room, blurred background, screenshot the call. Predators often use deepfakes. Guard your assets like your life depends on it. Because a 60-second video call stops 90% of scammers. Next, weaponize your bank. Set up transaction alerts for every transfer. Freeze your card if a partner asks to borrow it for verification. When Simon's victims reported fraud, banks dismissed them. You sent the money willingly. Now, survivors know the script. This is a romance scam. I was emotionally coerced. Freeze the transaction and file a police report. Under U.S. law, banks must investigate fraud claims, and 41% of romance scam victims recover funds when they persist. Guard your assets like your life depends on it. Because predators rely on your shame to keep you silent. This isn't paranoia, it's precision. Shimon Leviev didn't target stupid women. He targeted distracted ones. The woman checking Tinder during lunch breaks. The man scrolling Bumble after a bad day. Predators thrive in haste. So build your fortress. The 24-hour rule. Never send money after a request. Wait a day. If it's real, it'll wait. The stranger test. Would you lend $500 to a stranger on the street? Then don't to a soulmate online. The reality check. Google name plus scam before wiring a dime. Guard your assets like your life depends on it. Because in the attention economy, your focus is the ultimate asset. The final weapon. Community. When Cecilie's group spots a scammer, they flood his profiles with warnings. Verified fraudster. Do not send money. They've created a shadow network of protection where victims become sentinels. Report scams to the FTC, reportfraud.ftc.gov, and IC3.gov. Tag dating apps and posts. At Tinder, this predator is active on your app. Guard your assets like your life depends on it. Because predators operate in silence, and silence is your enemy. So here's your armor. Not fear but finesse. Not isolation but intelligence. When the next Simon slides into your DMs, private jet photos, diamond promises, urgent emergencies, you'll know the drill. Demand a live video call. Google his story. Say, I care, but I won't send money. If he vanishes, good, you've just dodged a bullet. If he stays, report him. Guard your assets like your life depends on it. Because the greatest power isn't avoiding scams. It's refusing to let them define your future. Your life isn't a transaction. It's a treasure. And treasures deserve locks, alarms, and a community to guard them. Simon Leviev didn't fall because he got caught. He fell because one woman, Cecilie Fjellhøy, finally said, no, now it's your turn. Protect your heart. Protect your wallet. Protect your truth. Because in the end, the only story that matters is the one you tell yourself when the performance ends. Make it true. Simon Leviev didn't steal money, he stole trust. The trust Cecilie Fjellhøy had in her own judgment. The trust Elaine Charlotte had in generosity. The trust you have in your gut when it whispers, this feels wrong. That's his real crime. And it's happening right now to someone swiping on Tinder, to someone answering a business opportunity email, to someone who just ignored a red flag because the dream felt worth the risk. Love doesn't operate on deadlines. Real connection doesn't demand emergency loans. And you deserve better than a predator's fairy tale. So here's your challenge. Next time urgency overrides your logic, pause. Demand the video call. Google the story. Say, I care, but I won't send money. Because the moment you protect your peace, you've already won. Hit subscribe for more stories that arm you with truth, not fear. Every week, we dissect the scams hiding in plain sight, the predators masquerading as princes, and the tools to reclaim your power. Don't wait for reality to kick down your door. Arm yourself today. Subscribe, listen, protect your heart and your wallet. Because in the end, the only story that matters is the one you tell yourself when the performance ends. Make it true.